I'm Tessa Albright, 31 years old. And that morning, my hands were buried in a trash bin behind a bank foreclosed mansion in Los Angeles, digging for an antique table leg that still had its original wood grain. When I turned around, I saw a woman in a white suit walking toward me. "Excuse me. Are you Tessa Albright Abuvias?" The sun was merciless, and the voice that had haunted me for the past 3 months echoed in my head, Jason's voice. My ex-husband's. "No one wants a broke, useless woman like you." "Tessa." I drew a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness like iron dust. I squinted and straightened up. "That's me," I said. "If you're here to collect debts, this is all there is, one table leg and a pair of dirty hands." The woman smiled and opened a black leather briefcase. "My name is Maya Cortez, attorney representing the estate of Dr. Brevenin, Benjamin Albright." I froze. The man who had raised me taught me architecture, then cut off all contact when I chose marriage over my career. He passed away 6 weeks ago, Maya said slowly. "And he left you his entire estate." Before I tell you what happened after that moment, tell me where you're watching this from, and what time it is. Because if you've ever had a day when every door seemed to close, then maybe you'll understand why I can never forget that morning. Hit like and subscribe. Because what happened next, no one could have predicted. I looked around, half expecting hidden cameras. "Are you kidding me? I can't even afford gas." Maya stayed silent, opened her briefcase, and pulled out an envelope sealed in silver. On it was written, "The Albright Foundation, Last Testament." The wind caught the papers, crinkling their corners. I let out a hoarse laugh, my throat dry. I haven't spoken to him in over 10 years. If this is a scam, it's a very convincing one. Maya's expression softened, but didn't change. "No, Ms. Albright. He never mistook people, and he still believed in you even when you stopped believing in yourself." Her words stung, like someone pressing on a scar long healed. 3 months ago, I'd stood in a house so large my own voice echoed back at me. Jason, my ex-husband, signed the divorce papers and said, in a tone as light as cigarette smoke, "I think you'll be fine. After all, you never really did anything." I remember not crying. I just folded the papers, packed a few clothes into a suitcase, and walked out of the house he'd just won in court. The sun had been scorching. My reflection on the dented car hood looked warped and cracked exactly like my life. I once had everything, until I realized none of it truly belonged to me. Now, amid the metallic smell of the junkyard, Maya repeated that name once more. Dr. Benjamin Albright. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as paper. The man who had raised me after my mother died taught me about form, light, and the patience of walls. And the same man who cut me off when I chose a man over my craft. "He's gone," Maya said softly. "6 weeks ago, and he left everything to you." I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. My eyes burned. The dust and the past mixed in my lungs, choking me. For 10 years I had buried that chapter. Now it returned, whole, in the voice of a stranger. Maya closed her briefcase gently, then opened the door of a black Lexus parked by the curb. "San Francisco is just 6 hours' drive. I'll explain the rest on the way." I stood there, frozen. Behind me, the junkyard glittered in the sun like a graveyard of old dreams. I looked down at the dusty table leg, the only thing I had ever called work. Then, for the first time in years, I let it fall. The thud on the ground was sharp and hollow, like the sound of a door quietly closing. "Maybe that's fine," I whispered. "I've always been good at starting over, with what others throw away." As the car rolled forward, the city shrank in the rearview mirror, warped, blurred, but no longer holding me. I leaned my head against the window, empty inside, unsure if what I felt was fear or hope. All I knew was, somewhere, In the hush between the engine's hum and the cold breath of wind, I heard something that felt like a distant calling, an invitation to come home. The car rolled out of Los Angeles, leaving behind the dark buildings and the burnt scent of asphalt in the wind. I leaned my head against the window, watching the dim lights pass by, feeling nothing but emptiness inside. Maya drove in silence. Only the sound of wind and faint jazz music blared from the radio. Each turn, each rhythm of the wheels felt like it was pulling me away from the old version of myself, the woman who once believed her worth was no more than a returned item, used and unwanted. What did he really leave for me? I asked, my voice barely steady. An empire. And a test. Maya replied. I let out a soft laugh. I'm not sure if it came from bitterness or fear. An empire I couldn't even keep a rented apartment. A test. Those 3 words cut into my mind like a small blade. Perhaps this wasn't a gift of redemption, but a reverse trial of fate itself. When we stopped at a coastal rest area, the air was thick with salt and the crash of waves pounding the shore. Inside a small lounge, Maya took out a folder and placed it gently on the table. The hard gray cover gleamed with silver letters, Last Will and Testament, Dr. Benjamin Albright. The paper was slightly yellowed, its edges folded from age. I touched it lightly, me fingers trembling. It felt strange, like reaching out to the very past I had spent 10 years running from. He left you his entire estate, his shares and his mansion in San Francisco. Maya said. But what? There's a condition. He wanted you to serve as the chief executive officer of Albright Design for at least 1 year. If you refuse or fail, everything transfers to the American Institute of Architects. I went still. 1 year I had never led anything except my own fear. That will doesn't open a door, it builds a wall, and my name is carved right into it. I stood and paced the room. The weak yellow light cast my warped shadow against the wall. Do you think I can do it? I think he believed you could. Believed. He cut me off. Maybe because he knew distance was the only way for you to understand the value of coming back. I gave a faint, bitter laugh, then fell silent. The sound of the waves hitting the glass grew louder, sinking with the panic in my chest. I'm scared. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Scared of failing, Maya asked, without looking at me. I'm scared of starting over with nothing but my own hands. Then at least, she said calmly, you still have 2 hands. Her words silenced me. Still have 2 hands. Sometimes, a simple sentence is all it takes to remind you that you're still alive, still capable of fighting. I sat down, staring at the pen Maya placed before me. It was heavy, cold, and gleaming under the dim light. For years, I'd only signed loan receipts, storage rentals, or temporary job applications. Now, one signature could redefine my entire life. What if I fail? I whispered. Then you'll lose everything, including this chance. He swallowed hard, breathing deeply. In my mind, Jason's voice echoed clearly. No one wants a woman who's failed. Tessa, you should just be grateful if someone still pities you. I bit my lip and looked at the will again. The word Albright was bolded on the header like a challenge. I signed. My hand trembled, the ink bleeding slightly. I signed with every ounce of courage I had left. I didn't sign because I believe I'll win. I signed because I'm too tired of losing. The next morning, the plane took off from Santa Barbara. Through the window, the ocean stretched out like a sheet of blue silk. I pressed my hand against the glass, feeling a calm begin to settle inside me. Maya read through her documents, occasionally glancing at me but saying nothing. At 30,000 feet above the ground, my past looked like a scattering of dim lights below. I closed my eyes, listening to the steady hum of the engine like the heartbeat of something about to come alive again. Neither of us said a word, but we both understood. This flight wasn't just carrying an anonymous woman to San Francisco. It was carrying another version of me, the one buried beneath the dust of failure. I once thought I was going to claim an inheritance, But in truth, I was flying straight into a battlefield called Albright, where I'd have to prove that the blood in my veins still belonged to a creator. The plane landed at dawn. Through the small oval window, the city of San Francisco emerged, veiled in mist, rows of bayfront houses reflecting the first blush of morning light. I once dreamed of living here in the glow of architectural exhibitions, under white lights and the soft chime of clinking glass. But that was 10 years ago. Back when I still believed that dreams could feed a person's soul. Maya turned to me, her tone calm. He kept the room on the 5th floor, the one you said you wanted to redesign. I looked up. After all these years, he never removed a single thing of yours. I gazed out the window, light brushing across my cheek. A room that had waited for me for 10 years. It sounded both tender and accusing. A room that had waited for me for 10 years. Maybe I hadn't come back to claim an inheritance, but to face a promise I had once broken. The car left the airport, gliding down a foggy road. As the black iron gate slowly opened, I heard the faint screech of metal, a sound that felt both ancient and weary. Like a sigh, before me stood the Albright Mansion sandstone facade. Stained glass windows shimmering with fractured reflections of light, like shards of memory. The air was so still I could hear the wind sweeping through the long corridor. Then a voice called out warm. "Trembling Miss Tessa, is that really you?" I turned. An elderly woman with silver hair and gentle eyes stood before me, Margaret Hale, the housekeeper from years ago. She pulled me into a tight embrace, the familiar scent of lavender catching in my throat. "Mr. Benjamin waited for you to come home," she whispered. I couldn't answer. All I could hear was the heavy rhythm of my heart, each beat an unspoken apology. I didn't know what shook me more, the flood of memories or the gaze of someone who had seen it all. Margaret led me up the spiral staircase. Each wooden step creaked softly, carrying the faint scent of old varnish and paper memories of my student years. When I sketched through the night beside a cup of cold coffee, the 5th floor opened to a stream of colored light spilling from stained glass windows onto the wooden floor, cutting through the room like strokes on a painting. At the center stood my old project, my graduation design, preserved behind glass, the paper yellowed with time. In the corner, written in his familiar handwriting, "Never let anyone else design your life." I touched the frame. "Mi fingers tremble." 10 years. And he had not forgotten. But I had. Never let anyone else design your life. I had let someone else draw mine. And now, I was paying for it with my own name. By evening, Maya appeared in my uncle's office, holding a new folder. "The board meeting is tomorrow morning," she said shortly. "You'll have to present your succession vision." I turned, startled. "Tomorrow?" "Yes. They want to see if you understand anything about Albright design. And frankly, they think you'll run." I gave a faint laugh. "They might be right. If you walk away, the will becomes void. But if you stay, I'll be devoured." I interrupted. "No," Maya said slowly. "You'll start learning how to stand tall." She set the documents on the desk and walked out. I watched her leave, my throat dry. Outside, the sun was setting red light, flooding the stained glass like fire. Only one night left to relearn how to stand before the world that once knelt to my mistakes. That night, I didn't sleep. Rain tapped against the glass roof, each droplet catching the golden lamplight like the ticking of time. On the desk, stacks of old drawings, the world I had once abandoned. I opened a new notebook. The first page was blank. My hand trembled. But this time it was from resolve. I wrote the first line, "Tomorrow." I returned to my world. Outside, San Francisco lay wrapped in rain. Somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear Uncle Benjamin's voice, gentle yet firm. "You only need to believe that you're still an architect." I put down the pen and looked up at the window. The city lights reflected on the glass, and in them my face, not the woman who had been left behind, but the one about to reclaim her own name. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into a room full of people who believed I wasn't worthy, and they would have to see not the daughter of Benjamin Albright, but his true successor. The Albright design building towered in the heart of San Francisco, its glass facade catching the morning sun, reflecting every hesitant step I took. The revolving door turned slowly. The grand lobby smelled of pine wood and cold metal. I walked in, the echo of my heels slicing through the polished emptiness. No one turned around. The receptionist glanced up briefly before bowing her head again, her tone mechanical. The main boardroom is on the 27th floor. The elevator code has been entered. No greeting. No trace of respect. I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall, a pale, thin stranger staring back. But in her eyes, something different glimmered. Faint, but alive, like a light about to be switched on. No one greeted me, but every glance whispered the same thing. She doesn't belong here. The boardroom door opened. Cold air. Faces turned toward me, all men. Suits crisp. Eyes sharp as blades. Maya introduced me briefly. This is Tessa Albright, the temporary acting head of the firm, as appointed in Dr. Benjamin Albright's will. A heavy silence followed. Then, a gray-haired man let out a dry, derisive laugh. Lead us, a woman who abandoned the field. I lifted my head. They weren't asking. They were judging. I looked around, searching for a neutral gaze, found only glass-cold scrutiny. Even the chair creaked in protest as I sat, as if the room itself rejected me. Sometimes silence is how they measure your worth, and I had just been appraised at nothing. Howard Crane, a man with a face carved from stone, leaned forward, his tone dripping disdain. Forgive me, but this is the leading architectural firm in America. A person with no projects, no experience, and no reputation will lead us. The paper rustled in my hands, the notebook I'd carried from my old house. I stood and opened it. Inside were sketches, unpublished designs. 10 years' worth of work from someone once called useless. I don't have experience on paper, I said slowly, but I have 10 years of learning, building, and standing back up. If you need proof, I'll let 10 years of dreams testify for me. The air in the room stilled. A few eyes shifted. Howard's hand tightened on the table. His smirk faded. If they needed proof, I'd let 10 years of dreams testify for me. One sentence, but it was a declaration of war. Maya glanced at me, giving a subtle nod. At the far end of the table, a young man, Liam Cade. The creative director tilted his head. His gaze held no mockery, only curiosity. Those sketches, Liam said, are original concepts. Yes, I replied. Interesting. I thought Dr. Albright was the last person in this company who still drew by hand. The room broke into faint laughter, softer now, less hostile. I pressed my lips together and nodded in thanks. Howard stayed silent, tapping his finger against the table, slow and steady, like a countdown to a long war. Light from the glass ceiling fell across my face, tracing the lines I'd once been ashamed of. For the first time, someone looked at me as if I belonged here. The meeting adjourned. Chair slid back, and footsteps echoed down the corridor. Howard walked past me, pausing just a second. You might fool a few of them, he said quietly, but you'll never be him. I met his gaze. I'm not trying to be him. I'm trying to be better. He didn't answer, only pressed his lips thin and walked away. Liam came last, his steps unhurried, hands in his pockets. Your first day was intense, he said with a slight smile. And you were suspiciously quiet, I replied. Sometimes smart people don't talk in noisy rooms. I let out a soft laugh. He handed me a business card. If you want someone to show you the company archives, call me. Iove Benjamin promise. He left, the door closing behind him, leaving me in a room that was both cold and bright. My hand rested on the notebook. where a faded line of handwriting read, "You will not be judged by your past unless you let them." Howard Crane didn't say another word, but the look he gave as the door shut cold, unbroken, was a promise of war. And I knew then. The real battle had only just begun. My first morning at Albright Design. Sunlight streamed through the glass panels, gliding across the wooden walls and brushing the edges of the old sketches still lying on my stepfather's desk. The office that had once belonged to him now bore my name, but everything inside it whispered, "You don't belong here." A female assistant paused at the door, her tone icy. "Mister." Benjamin's desk was rarely touched. "But you may reorganize it if you wish." I nodded faintly. When the door shut, only the sound of the wall clock remained, each tick marking the distance between his past and my present. I took the clock down and placed it in the drawer. The dull thud echoed like a quiet declaration. His time has ended. Mine begins now. I don't need them to like me. I just need them not to be able to deny me. Rumors spread faster than the morning light. "She's just a lucky heir. This company's going down." I walked through those words without looking back, but I knew Howard Crane was the shadow behind them. He never opposed me openly. He simply made everything slower. A contract forgotten to be signed. An email accidentally unsent. A file corrupted. Small moves precise. Cruel. Deliberate. I noted every detail. Not with anger, but with the patience of someone who had already survived ruins. I'd spent 10 years being controlled, and now I understood real power is the ability to stay calm while surrounded by chaos. They don't need to destroy you. They just need to let you destroy yourself. At noon, Liam Cade appeared with 2 cups of coffee. "I heard you're planning a community project." "Yes," I said. "I want to revive the South Mission neighborhood, a place where architecture isn't just housing but a chance to live again." He set the cup on my desk and skimmed through my messy sketches. "You're using recycled materials. Natural light direction. Rainwater collection systems. This idea is risky." "Risk," I said, "is the only honest thing left in this industry." He smiled faintly, saying nothing more. But when he closed my notebook, I noticed a new line in pencil on the last page. "Sometimes you don't need anyone to believe, just someone to understand." He didn't say I was right. He just said I wasn't wrong. The day of the Project Haven presentation, the boardroom was packed. The white lights reflecting across the polished table. I plugged the USB drive into the projector. The screen stayed black. An error message flashed. "File corrupted." I inhaled slowly. Everyone exchanged looks. Howard smiled faint, but clear enough. I knew exactly who had done it. Instead of panicking, I picked up a pen and a sheet of paper. "If the file is gone, then we'll do it the way my father once did by hand." The first lines trembled, then steadied. I drew the layout. The wind flow, the path of sunlight, and the rhythm of human movement. The room fell silent. When I set the pen down, Liam was the first to clap. "This," I said, "isn't just a design. It's a promise that we can rebuild what was once abandoned. I once rebuilt my own life from ruins. A broken file won't bring me down." That afternoon, I walked out of the boardroom to a murmur of voices. No one was laughing anymore. They were asking about materials, lighting, and planning. I smiled, answered only some of them. Because some answers don't need to be spoken. They need to be proven. Liam found me by the elevator. They'll remember today for a long time. For the project. For the first time, they saw someone who wasn't afraid to fail. I laughed softly, though deep down I knew this calm wouldn't last. On the 27th floor, Howard watched me through the glass of his office. His stare was cold, deep, and calculating. No one laughs in my face anymore, but I can feel it. Someone's already waiting to stab me in the back. If you're still listening to this story, you're someone who truly understands. Leave a number 1 in the comments. So I know you're still here, and I want to send you a special thank you. Because not everyone has the patience to walk through the middle of someone else's journey. Rumors always know the perfect time to multiply. 3 days after the successful presentation, whispers began to spread across the office. Project Haven. Sounds familiar. Doesn't it? Greystone submitted a similar concept last year. I walked into the meeting room and saw eyes flick away like doors closing one after another. No one said a word. But I could hear it in the air, that mix of silence and suspicion. Maya sent me a message. The article goes live soon. They have an internal source. I looked up. The sunlight from the glass ceiling hit straight into my eyes, the kind of light that makes you squint so you don't cry. Rumors don't need evidence. They only need someone willing to believe them. The next morning, the San Francisco Chronicle ran a headline in bold, Albright design accused of concept theft. Right beneath it, a photo of me during the presentation. My smile caught mid-frame, making me look like someone just caught red-handed. In the emergency meeting, Howard laid the newspaper flat on the table. His voice was deep, pretending to sound concerned. How unfortunate. Tessa, I warned you to check your source materials carefully. The public can be sensitive. I met his eyes. And you think I stole my own idea. I'm only saying the company needs someone willing to take responsibility. The words dropped like a heavy stone, sinking into the thick stagnoir. I knew it clearly. Howard didn't want me to take responsibility. He wanted me gone. Not everyone who stands beside you wants you to win. I stayed at the office late that night. The room was empty, only rain tapping on the windows and the glow from the computer screen. Liam walked in, carrying his laptop. I checked the internal storage. He said, "There's a duplicate of the Project Haven file downloaded using admin access. Who's Howard Cranes?" The air froze. He turned the screen toward me. Access logs, DMS dumps, and IP traces. Everything is flawless, too flawless. As if he wanted me to find it. You think he's setting me up? No. He wants you to react. Because if you lose control, the board will have a reason to remove you. I looked out the window, raindrops trailing down the glass, forming patterns like erased sketches. A part of me wanted to smash everything. Another part was learning to wait. Sometimes, the truth is only one click away. The next morning, I knocked on Howard's office door. He stood before a framed painting, coffee cup in hand. A thin smile stretched like a tightened wire. "Did you come to apologize?" "No. I came to ask why a man like you is so afraid of someone like me." He chuckled softly. "Afraid, no. Tessa, I just pity you. You think strength means a few sketches and an emotional pitch. This is business. Here. The survivors are the ones willing to get their hands dirty first." I stepped closer. "If you think a newspaper article will break me, then you've forgotten I've survived worse." His eyes narrowed, and in that moment, I understood Howard didn't just want my seat. He wanted to erase the last trace of Benjamin Albright from this company. People don't kill you with guns. They kill you by making others doubt you. By the weekend, the board issued a temporary suspension for investigation. The notice was pinned right on the glass door of the 27th floor, where every employee had to walk past. I read each word carefully. It felt like reading my own obituary. Liam came running. "I'll find the proof. Tessa, Howard won't get away with this. Don't rush," I said quietly. Sometimes silence is the only trap that makes a liar afraid. I packed my things. The room was empty again, just like the day I first arrived. As I stepped out of the building, the first drops of rain began to fall cold, but clean. Up above, through the glass walls, Howard watched me. He raised his wine glass, smiling slightly, as if victory already belonged to him. "They can take my title, but they will never take my essence." That morning, I received a message from Maya. An old envelope was just delivered from Dr. Benjamin's archives. "I think you should see it." I arrived at the office while the city was still wrapped in mist. The archive room on the 5th floor smelled of damp wood and old paper, as if time itself had stopped there. Maya placed the envelope on the table. It was yellowed with age, sealed with red wax. In the top corner, the familiar handwriting Benjamin Albright. I sat down. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were just a few lines, written in blue ink. If you're reading this, it means the storm has come. Don't fear the darkness. Tessa, it only reveals who truly stands beside you. The word darkness was smudged as if tears had once touched the page. Some instructions are written only when a person knows they're about to disappear. Along with the envelope, Maya handed me a black leather notebook, its edges frayed. The smell of ink long turned brown. I flipped through the pages. They were sketches of Project Haven, but older than the version I had presented. And in the corner of every drawing, written in small, fine letters, concept by B, A, and T, A. My heart clenched. T, A. That was me when I was 22. I remembered sketching that idea one night in the studio. But after marriage, it had all been forgotten. I placed the notebook on the table, my fingertips brushing the faded ink. Benjamin hadn't just been my mentor. He had seen something in me that I had lost sight of. It turns out, every beginning I'm living now was born from a forgotten memory. I closed my eyes, and the image returned an afternoon years ago. In the small studio with the window open to the wind, Benjamin sat at the drafting table, his gray hair disheveled, his hands stained with ink. Tessa, he said, every design has a crack, but if you know how to use it, light will pass through that very place. And if someone steals your idea, I asked. He looked up and smiled, then let them live under the shadow of it, while you walk on with the real light. I smiled faintly at the memory. His voice still lingered in the quiet room, and I understood he had known what Howard would do long before it happened. Memories can sleep, but they never die. I opened my laptop and began photographing each page of the notebook. If I published them, the world would see that Project Haven wasn't stolen. It was the shared dream between Benjamin and me. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth, not fury. If he wants to make me a symbol of scandal, I thought, then I'll become a symbol of integrity. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, lighting up the notebook pages. The old ink shimmered faintly, as if Benjamin himself was smiling from somewhere beyond. Sometimes victory doesn't lie in retaliation, but in making others see the truth. I met Liam at a small cafe near the Golden Gate Bridge. The air carried the salty scent of the bay, and the clink of cups blended with the hum of cars on the bridge. He opened his laptop. I set the notebook on the table. If we release these sketches at the company's press conference, then the truth will speak for itself, he said. I nodded softly. No anger remained, only calm. Everything was clear now. I didn't need to restore my reputation. I just needed to stand again where I truly belonged. Before leaving, I opened Benjamin's letter one last time. At the bottom of the final page, a line I hadn't noticed before. If you're reading this, it means it's time to rebuild yourself. Tomorrow, they won't hear rumors. They'll hear the truth from me. The San Francisco sky that morning was veiled in a thin silver mist, like a silk scarf draped across the horizon. I looked at myself in the mirror, thinner than before, but my eyes no longer looked away. Liam paced the living room, testing the microphone and adjusting the presentation slides. On the table sat a cup of cold coffee and Benjamin's old fountain pen, the dark wooden body worn smooth, as if it had rested in his hand for years. Did you get any sleep? Liam asked, his voice rough. Not really, I said, but I dreamt of him. Benjamin was smiling. A morning breeze slipped through the window, making the corner of the old letter in my pocket tremble. Outside, the city was waking the sound of car horns, birds, and wind blending together. Today, I wouldn't just tell a story, I would return the truth to the man who believed in me. Sometimes the brightest light comes from those who've already walked through the dark. The grand lobby of Albright Innovations was crowded with people. Journalists from every outlet packed the space. Flashes exploded like lightning. The air was thick with the scent of coffee, printer ink, and tension. Howard stepped onto the stage in a dark gray suit. His face carried the exhaustion of sleepless nights, but his eyes were still sharp as ever. "Thank you all for coming," he began, with a voice tinged with false weariness. "Today, we wish to clarify certain misunderstandings surrounding Project Haven." I stood behind the curtain. The stage lights hit my trembling hands. Warm and unyielding. Howard adjusted the microphone. "It's unfortunate when collective effort becomes misunderstood through the lens of individual recognition. But we trust that truth will always prevail." Maya stood beside me and whispered, "He wants you to burn right there." In front of the cameras, I smiled so faint only she could hear it. "Then let them film the moment I rise from the ashes." They wanted me to collapse under the spotlight. But this time I was ready. My name was announced. The entire room fell silent. Hundreds of cameras turned toward me as I stepped forward, my heels striking evenly against the marble floor. "Thank you," I began, my voice calm and steady. "I didn't come here to defend myself. I came to remind everyone of what was forgotten." The first slide lit up ink-stained sketches of Project Haven appeared on the screen. In the corner of every page, the small inscription, "Concept by B, End, and T, End." Whispers rippled across the crowd like a wave. Howard's jaw tightened, his composure cracked. I opened the old notebook and read aloud from Benjamin's journal, March 12th. "She sees the city as a living body with a soul. I believe one day Tessa will turn architecture into a place where people are healed." No one spoke. Only the clicking of camera shutters filled the silence. Howard lowered his head, lips pressed thin. I looked out over the audience, no longer afraid, only calm, anchored, and whole. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be seen. A reporter stood up. "Do you resent them?" he asked. "For taking credit for your work." I looked straight into the row of cameras. "No," I said. "I'm grateful, because they reminded me who I am." Silence, then scattered applause, which grew and rolled through the hall like surf. Howard didn't look up again. Maya wiped her tears. Liam placed a hand on my shoulder, a silent congratulations. I met the lens of a camera, feeling the thousands of unseen eyes behind it. When you stop trying to prove yourself, they're forced to believe. I paused, then smiled softly. I don't need to defeat anyone. I just needed to find myself again. They once took my voice. Today, they have to listen. The press conference ended. A gust of ocean wind swept through the open doors, tossing my hair. Outside, the sky glowed a warm honey gold. Liam walked beside me, checking his phone. "You should see this," he said. "Social media's blowing up." On the screen, the headline read, "Project Heaven, the true story revealed." Beneath it, thousands of comments. "I believe her. That's real leadership." I stepped onto the sidewalk, looking toward the Golden Gate Bridge, burning crimson in the sunset. The bridge connected both sides of the city, just as it connected two versions of me, the one who had been buried, and the one now stepping into the light. "What will you do now?" Liam asked. "Maybe," I said. "I'll rewrite this story, but not in words." In architecture, we fell silent. Only the crash of distant waves and the sound of wings cutting across the sky. I glanced down at my phone, a new email. The subject line held just 4 words, "The final test." I stopped walking. A breeze swept past, carrying salt and the last golden light of the day. I once thought every test was over. But maybe this journey still has one more chapter. Morning light slid through the window, thin as a golden thread. I woke up in my small apartment by the bay where the sea breeze was so gentle, it only brushed the edge of the curtain. No cameras. No noise from yesterday's press conference. Only stillness, warm and soft, like a silent congratulations from the world itself. On the table, Benjamin Albright's notebook lay open to the final page. Beside it, his old fountain pen rested at an angle. The ink dried at the tip. I poured myself a cup of tea, the scent of bergamot filling the room. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to prepare for anything. "Are you okay?" Liam's voice appeared in a message on my screen. I typed back, "I'm fine. Just learning how to be silent without feeling empty. Sometimes the quiet of morning is louder than last night's applause." I placed a blank sheet of paper over Benjamin's notebook, not to write to him, but to write to myself, the woman who had walked through ashes, fear, and flashes of light. "Dear Tessa," I wrote, "if one day you feel lost, remember, you once stood before hundreds of eyes and didn't tremble. You were once called a dreamer, and you kept dreaming. You were once seen as weak, but that weakness taught you patience." A tear fell onto the page, spreading like a drop of old ink. I smiled not from sadness, but from gratitude. I folded the letter and placed it between the pages of Benjamin's notebook, right beside his final line. "If you're reading this, it means it's time to rebuild yourself." End quote. I once thought strength meant never falling. Now I know strength means having the courage to admit that you once did. That afternoon, Liam stopped by with 2 cups of coffee. He was still wearing the same old shirt, a thick folder in hand. "The company just got an invitation from Zurich," he said. "An international architecture award they want you to attend." I set my cup down and shook my head slightly. "Not now. I think I need some quiet first." He nodded. Looking around the room, his gaze softened. "I understand. Benjamin would be proud. He doesn't need to be proud," I said. "I just want him to know I finally came home to where I belong." Outside, the afternoon light tilted across the bay. We sat there in silence, saying nothing more, because sometimes peace doesn't need to be explained. Not every victory needs a stage. A week later, I returned to the old office bringing only Benjamin's notebook and a signed document. Maya greeted me with a smile. "You're sure you want to transfer the entire sum into this fund?" "Yes," I said. "It should be called the Haven Fellowship, for architecture students whose dreams no one believed in." I signed my name, the pen trembling slightly. The scent of fresh ink mingled with the oakwood air, reminding me of Benjamin's old studio. I pictured a young student opening a scholarship letter, reading the words, "Someone believed in you before you believed in yourself." When I stepped outside, I looked up at the sky, the same color as Benjamin's favorite sketches, the color of hope, fading slowly but never gone. The most beautiful legacies don't live in possessions. They live in how we make others believe in themselves. That night, I came home and opened the window. The moonlight reflected on the water, each ripple breathing gently. I sat down at the table, Benjamin's notebook before me. One page at the end was still blank. I picked up my pen and wrote slowly, "Not everyone deserves your return, but you will always deserve your own peace." I closed the notebook and turned off the light. In the dark, nothing felt frightening anymore. It was just silence, the kind that lets you hear your own heartbeat clearly. The wind from the bay drifted in, carrying salt and the scent of damp wood. Somewhere out there, someone was beginning again, just as I once did. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you for being here to the very end. Leave a number 2 in the comments so I can send you my heartfelt thanks. And don't forget to like and subscribe, so I can share more stories filled with meaning in life, because your voice truly matters.